Hold on. Morgan Graham. Ken Moore. Here. Ken. Hey, Ken. Melinda. Here. Adolfo. Here. Gail. Here. We have a quorum. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, Mike. Why did I miss you?
I don't know. I'm standing right in front of you, man.
No, sorry, man. I actually had already written your name down, so it's crazy.
We've talked a few times.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we got 7. Okay. All right, so, yes, please.
Are we in executive session?
Not that it'll help, because we got that. No, we're not in executive session.
Because everything else has been an executive session, guys, so I'm just asking.
No, this is open. I don't know if we can hear with the next door neighbors. It's what we get for being in a bad neighborhood, I tell you. So I think everybody, just to kind of tell, we've got a couple of folks listening. So just to let y'all know what's happening. Kit, pay attention. Huh? You can't? I just said I'm just going to set up what we're doing today, since we've got you and somebody else who are here watching. So last session we had decided that we'll reformat the committee basically to come up to review the platform, look for planks that are will have a high impact on benefiting the citizens of Texas or the Republican Party, preferably both. And so everyone was tasked with going out and going through and submitting 1, 2, or 3 planks that they liked, that they thought would be, game changers for the state of Texas. All those came back to me. I compiled a list, sent it back to everybody else. And at the meeting today, we're going to go through those and discuss each of them in turn. The people that submitted the plank will get to defend it. At some point in the meeting, we'll have a vote on your top 10. And depending upon how the vote goes, then we may go through a couple of iterations in that. I'm not putting anybody's name, and please don't put your name on your top 10 list, so we have anonymity. I didn't put names of any of the people on who recommended which plank, so that there won't be any sort of, prejudice or in favor or against any of it. Just look at the merits of the arguments and the plank itself. And then we'll keep going until we get our. Yes, that's the list. So we'll keep going until we get our top 10 list. Let me pull that up here. Oh, that's Evans. No wonder they're so loud. All right, so let's just start. Everybody should have the list of all the planks that were submitted, and we'll just go through each one until hopefully we can get through them all today. We'll see. So the first plank is plank 15, which is Constitutional Article 4, Section 4, invasion. Does anyone want to speak on behalf of that plank?
I'll speak on it.
Adolfo, you have the floor, my friend. Can we get him a mic? Get him.
That is not occurring, and I think we need to be aggressive about clarifying that at the national level, which allows states to take a more aggressive approach.
This will pick you up.
In 2017, only 7%. You there? Okay. In 2017, only 7% of people that came into the United States were repeat offenders. And my years might not be exactly right, but like in 2020 or 2021, it was 23 or 24%, and then either 21 or 22, it was like 26%. So not only are we getting a lot more people, the people that repeat being criminals in this country continues to go up. And I think that needs to end. The federal government's not doing anything. I think we need to get, as a state, aggressive and push this at a national level. And I think there's enough concern nationally that we will find support for it. I think it's worth pursuing.
Okay, thank you, Adolfo. Does anyone else want to speak either for or against this plank? Okay.
I agree with you, Adolfo. So the assumption then that we're making is that the governor is not doing enough. Is that kind of what I'm hearing then, if that's what you're saying? Because I think the governor has addressed that at the national level, but obviously he's fighting an uphill battle with the Biden administration. So, that's my only thought is like if we say this as one of our top priorities, then we're also sending another message as well. But if it needs to be sent, then so be it. That's my only additional comment to your statement.
And I'll respond to that. I do think that the governor possibly is not doing enough. However, he's following a very sensitive path. And so I think him being cautious along that path is exactly what he should be doing. And so, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't like to see him be more aggressive and go further. But I also understand that there's a lot of legal risk and political risk, and that needs to be managed also. So I think both sides, we need to push and to get them to go forward. Hope that answers your question.
Yep. No further comments from me. I think that answers it.
May I ask a question as well? And maybe I should turn around and talk to you two. Is there something specific that needs to be in law? Because we're talking platform here, and the things that we want to concentrate on in a future session. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
You might be.
Well, I do know there are other platforms or planks that we're going to address that go into more specific about security, but in this case, it's generally, an invasion is what we're talking about. But we do actually have specific planks that address some specific actions towards border security.
See, a couple of things. Let me read what the plank actually says, and this is in the constitutional section of the platform under preservation of Constitution. The plank reads, "The sovereignty of this state requires the protection afforded under Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, and any failing thereof authorizes the government of this state or the legislature to declare an invasion, which shall be met with the full force of this state." So that's the plank that we're talking about making one of our top 10.
Would you like to read the actual, what the Constitution says? Section 4?
Not yet, but I will let you do that in a minute. So a couple of things, sort of your exchange that you guys just had, there's more you had questions about how does it actually work, and your response is there's specificity in some of our other planks that we're going to talk about in a little bit later. And I just want to remind you guys that the charge of the committee is to the best of our ability, determine the impact that this will have and why we should put it in our top 10. So my opinion, I love the plank. I love almost all of our planks, but this is kind of a general broad statement, and it doesn't go into how much money will the state save if we do this? How much money does it cost us by not doing it? What are the specific steps we're going to try to write into legislation? To me, when I read the plank, the only thing that we're doing in this plank is calling for the governor to declare an invasion. So that's probably not a piece of legislation. It could be a resolution that we pass at the convention, and that also might be appropriate, but just remember what our focus is here. We're trying to maximize the value to the citizens, either be it if you can define it economically, or if you can define it just in terms of other benefit, maybe loss of life or preservation of life or something else. So that's kind of what our charge is. Melinda, do you want to read Article 4, Section 4?
And basically, our Constitution states, this is Article 4, Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government,
and shall protect each of them against invasion. So it's the duty of our federal government to protect states against invasion. And on application of the legislature or of the executive, when the legislature cannot be convened, so this falls on the U.S. legislation, it'll be against domestic violence. So our federal government was given the charge to protect the states. And the U.S. congressional legislation should be passing laws to do that, and they're not. So, basically, we need to continue to remind the government that they have a duty to protect us. And then does our state constitution allow for the governor to call an invasion if the federal government is negligent in their duties?
So, and the nature of a republic is that, we have all the states who have the power, all the power not specifically subscribed or given to the federal government. So if the federal government fails in its duties in one of the specific powers that was given to it, then the state, my understanding of the Constitution is correct, reserves the right to then act on that in its own defense in this case.
So in terms of declaring an invasion, just a few of the news sources I've seen, because I believe that the governor on September 21st has declared an invasion. So, and then last year in November of 22nd, he invoked an invasion clause. It's not as strong as declaring an invasion, but September 21st of this year, he actually declared an invasion. So from the state's actions, we've done that.
So this has been fulfilled.
So that's where I was saying is I think the governor has done some of that already. I think he can be more aggressive to Adolfo's comments. But I think in terms of our, agreeing with Matt essentially that there are, this is a general thing. It would be a resolution and it would go up to the Biden administration, and I'm sure they would do what we think they would do with our resolution from Texas to go do something.
So did I hear you right that you think that the next step is a resolution?
No, I'm saying I think there are other priorities that go specific to legislation that would
Okay.
secure border funding and things like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
My concern is, and I'm repeating part of it, but I'm going someplace, is I think the governor has done a great job. And I think him sending people all over the United States has been outstanding. It got everybody's attention that we never had attention before. I think he needs to be more aggressive. And given what you're saying, I think if we're going to send a resolution, the resolution has to be very strong. Not just the fact that he's not doing his job, but the negative impact that it's occurring on the community, both from a national risk because of the people that are being captured, and all those statistics are available by Customs and Border Protection, and it's gone up significantly. And so I want us to be extremely aggressive on what we're doing on the border. I think our risk is going up. Nobody paid attention to the border nationally outside of the border people until he started sending people. Well, I think if he gets more aggressive and we start pushing these things, I think maybe more will get done. So.
Adolfo, does the Texas state constitution clearly define the actions of the governor when he declares an invasion? Is that clearly defined as to what action he proceeds with beyond declaring an invasion?
Let me respond, and then if you've got something different, Adolfo, let me know. I don't think it clearly defines it. I do think that there are some things in law that are made available to him once an invasion is declared, and I don't know what those are. I think he partially declared that invasion so that he could do more things, like moving to build barriers on the wall and moving to put in the concerta wire and maybe the floating barrels that he put in the Rio Grande. So those activating the Texas military, the Texas National Guard. So I think those are some of the things that he can do. So with what we've kind of said is that the next step is probably a resolution. It probably doesn't belong on our top 10 list, but one of you two, Adolfo or Mike, would you be willing to take up responsibility of coming up with a resolution, and maybe we look at it next quarter, and then, I don't know, depending on the meetings, maybe we'll just look at it. I'll call a meeting in between probably, but I want to have it so it goes out into your precinct and your SD conventions or your county conventions, and then it comes up to resolutions committee for the resolutions committee to hear at convention. Would you guys be willing to kind of work on that? Hold on, Gail.
We'll joke that, but you said something that I thought was interesting. They propose,
Resolutions and planks, yeah.
resolutions and planks. And I think, I mean, there's no question. I can get several people, if we come up with wording, I can get a number of people to present that in various formats or one format.
Yeah.
Precinct meetings, so that it goes up there.
Yeah, so if we can get it to be widespread, I mean, even whether it's just across your all's two SDs or send it out to the rest of the team members, and then we can introduce it in our SDs as well, and then it'll come up with more support when it gets to Platform and Resolutions Committee, and we'll have it on that last page for consideration where we just consider resolutions. And there's usually, sometimes there's none, sometimes there's a few, but this would be, I think, a good one to have come up through the convention process. Okay, Gail, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm concerned. I want to make sure, because this is such a new committee, that we're doing what we have, or we're finding out what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, we're having to be creative. Okay, and when you do what you've just described, that's a process that's already in place. Yes. All right, and it comes out in the form of a plank if it passes.
No.
If it comes out as a resolution, it's not coming up through the system.
No. So the committee that I chaired in 2022 is the Platform and Resolution Committee. So a lot of the stuff that comes up will be there'll be resolutions that we turn into planks, and then there'll be the very last thing that we do, it doesn't go through the subcommittee process, it's just done by the committee of the whole, is we consider resolutions that are statements by the committee. So let me give you an example. Hold on one second. I've got the 2022 printed platform that was handed out to all of the delegates to vote on. And we have a page, it's page 40 in the printed document called resolutions, and there are only two resolutions. One is on the 2020 election, and the other one was a resolution against the Gang of 20 gun control bill. So those are not planks, those are resolutions that we as a delegate body vote on. Okay? So that's what we're talking about you guys doing is sending a resolution up for that purpose.
But I also heard that you didn't really, what you were going for, Adolfo, was not a resolution. You're trying to get action, right?
I do want action. And again, but I also think there have been some important points that have been raised. One of them being that, you know, I personally think that the governor right now is wide open to whatever he wants to do. Okay? Because the president has not accepted the responsibilities that he is constitutionally obligated to accept. Okay? Therefore, I would like something very strong for us to get accepted, or to us to get passed, and tells him we want him to be more aggressive, and it sends a message to Washington that we're just taking control.
Okay.
We're not doing anything.
Okay. All right, so you guys work on the plank, and then we'll talk about some of that other specificity in one of the other 20 things that we've got to discuss still. Okay, so let's move to the next one, which is plank number 30, parental rights. I'm going to read the plank. The rights of parents are foundational to Western society and shall be respected, affirmed, and protected by the Texas Constitution and Texas law. Furthermore, it is imperative that the Texas legislature pass, there's your action, a parental right amendment to be added to the Texas Constitution in order to secure these rights for future generations. We call upon the legislature to properly recognize and affirm the fundamental right of parents to make all decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children in all aspects, especially with regard to the grievous violations of the Texas education systems. Any failure to recognize, protect, or honor these fundamental rights shall be actionable. No parent exercising any of these fundamental rights shall be prosecuted as domestic terrorists. Okay. So there's a pretty specific description of the action that we want the legislator to take in that plank. Does anybody want to speak on this particular plank?
I think this is a no-brainer. I think that this is both general and specific. I think that there's all sorts of legislative action to be taken from this plank. I don't see how this cannot be one of our top 10 things. I think that I don't see how this cannot be one of our top 10 planks. I think this is one of our absolute, well, it was a legislative priority, but I think that this committee, to separate ourselves from Legislative Priorities Committee, can do a whole lot with this plank.
That LP cannot?
That LP cannot, because I think LP has restrictions that we don't have. And so I think that this is a no-brainer. I don't think we have a lot of other areas on this list that we submitted that covers this particular issue. So I see all reason to add this to our list of 10 and no reason not to.
I'm going to make a couple of quick comments, and then if you guys have other stuff to say. I agree with you. To me, this seems to be trying to fill a hole in the explicit statement of our rights as parents that is not currently covered in Texas law or in the Constitution, in one way inexplicably, but also almost unbelievable that we would have to spell this out. It was something that I was taken for granted, and only in the last couple of years has it been something that has been attacked, and now we have to state the obvious by actually putting this into our Constitution. So I'm not sure that we can quantify the benefit of it, but it seems to be such a fundamental thing that it's hard to underestimate the benefits that flow from our stating the natural rights of parents. You did bring up a good point that it wasn't LP last time. We had all agreed that our charge would be to come up with things that were not covered by LP. So in the event if we put this on our list and it comes up to be on LP, then that means our committee will drop it and let LP run with it, and we'll just focus on 9 at that point. All right. So I'm okay with this one being on. You know, I don't. There might be some that we have a debate about. Let's leave that for LP. But I don't want to create a list that's going to be 9 of ours are the 10 or things that LP is going to do, and we end up with one thing we're working on. So, but I think this one is important enough. So
Any of these things can end up being an LP.
they could.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay. Yep.
As much as I agree with this, I want to caution us from the parents who are not worthy parents. We make no exceptions in our statement that if we have abusive parents, we have parents who are sexually abusing their children, we have parents who are neglecting their children. I don't want us to get caught looking like we don't care. about children as we try to protect parents' rights. I just want to caution us, that's all. Wording would be important.
Well spoken. We do have a lot of laws that govern those things too already in place. So, yep. Ken Moore?
Okay, I'll take what Gail's talked about and I'll give the flip side of that. Right now, my family, for the second time this year, is embroiled with CPS. In both cases, it's absolute nonsense, and I won't go into all the details of it. But what's egregious is, the first time around, they made us follow a safety plan which took the kids away from the parents for a month. And then we finally got some feedback from them, and they wanted the parents to go through parenting classes, which took another 6 weeks on top of that. And then the second time, they said, we'll have the whole thing wrapped up in about 30 days, okay? Yesterday was day 30. We haven't heard anything from them. The caseworker has disappeared. She's not responding to emails or texts, and we're really not sure where we're going to go next. But I think CPS is, in many cases, doing more damage than good by taking these children away from the parents.
Yeah, my worry is CPS is becoming a. Hey, Gail, please, I'm talking. Gail, please, I'm talking. Gail, my concern is that CPS is becoming a tool of the trans movement to radicalize children, and it's how they're basically stealing kids from families. So that's my worry.
We do have a separate plank regarding CPS.
Yeah, yep. Gail, did you have something you wanted to add?
I just want to make us careful of the news optics.
Okay.
That's all.
Yep, Adolfo, hold on.
Thank you, sir. I agree with what you said about making sure we still protect children. I was a member of the board of CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocates, for a number of years. And I saw example after example, and CPS, in my mind, is a different issue that needs to be dealt with. And we do need to deal with that, because I would see CASAs, those are the people, who are the advocates, recommend, because they knew what was going on in those households, that child should not go back to the mother or should not go back to the father. And CPS's recommendation is always send it back to the family, because that's their stated goal, and that's wrong. And so I agree with your concern, and I think this issue on CPS is a different issue that we ought to address, because CPS is a problem, without a doubt.
Thank you, Adolfo. Okay, any other comments on this plank? Okay. So you guys, I hope, are keeping notes on what your top 10s are as we go through. Okay. Next up is plank 56, Midland, not Moscow.
Well, I submitted this one. Most of the things I submitted deal with keeping foreign countries out of our country. So for Midland, not Moscow, what that does is it promotes oil production within the United States and our Permian Basin, versus us purchasing oil from China and Moscow and Venezuela. So that was my purpose of putting this in. I didn't even put it in my top 10, I'll be honest, because there were so many other points that I thought took priority over that one. But I still think it's a good plank to have.
Okay. Yep, Mike.
I didn't, I'm glad you submitted it, because I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, that's really good. And, in my district, it's oil country as well. And so I think it's a good one. And it's something that we can take locally as well, because I know from a state perspective, there seems like there's a larger push for green energy that I don't necessarily, it's a form of energy. I think it needs to be market driven, and we're not actually doing that right now. So I think we have abundant energy sources in our state. We need to allow for that for that use. And I think the plank is worded well in terms of the state taking the necessary policies and infrastructure investments in roads and pipelines and ports. And I think that's a good thing for the state to invest in for the benefit of the state.
Put Texas first.
I agree with the plank that we have also, but given the state's position on oil and gas production, which is very protective of oil and gas producers, I don't know that we need to go anymore. The issue on this item is again the federal level, not the state level. The state of Texas, the Railroad Commission, is very pro-production. I happen to have some property in Pecos County that got oil and gas on it. I don't happen to have the rights though. But anyway, and I know what they're allowed to do to my property, and I understand. So I don't think this needs additional attention in the state of Texas. I think it's a national level where this is an issue.
Okay, thank you, Adolfo. Next is 111, founding documents in high school. Let me get down to that one and I'll read it. We support a high school level curriculum rather than an 8th grade level for the study of American history pre-1877 that is heavily weighted towards the study of original founding documents, including the Declaration of Independence, the United States Constitution, the Constitutional Convention, the Federalist Papers, and founders' writings. Who would like to speak on this?
Again, I didn't submit this one, but when I saw it, I was like, wow, this is really good. We've had 2 committee meetings this morning already discussing how can we engage and how can we improve the party's future. And this is one that I think is not just for the party, but towards Americanism, towards patriotism, and making sure that our future citizens understand what the founding documents say. And I don't think that our schools do that well enough right now. So I think this is actually a good investment into our future.
I'm going to back up a little bit. Are we proposing legislation or just modifications of our planks? And the reason I ask is this to me is a legislative issue because I believe that our kids are not being taught what the founding fathers believed when they started this. And my reaction is we ought to have state legislation that requires this instead of letting TEA define getting rid of these courses in high school. So again, I support this tremendously, but this to me is a legislative issue where we should require it by law that it be taught in high school at the junior level, because that's when American history used to be taught. And I think it should be taught because you're at a maturity level where you can appreciate it.
Yeah, we're definitely not talking about modifying planks because that is not our job. That's the job of the convention at committee and the convention as a whole to define what our planks are. So we're talking about legislation, pretty much always at the state level. Yeah, and I had American history in 9th, world history in 10th, and then government and civics in 11th. So I would love to see us get back to that. Yep. Gail, wait, just till I sat down. Here you go.
That was intentional.
I agree. I think this is vitally important, and I would love to see us have a robust plank that includes, but I'm not sure that high school is where it totally needs to be. God has given me a vision for homeschool moms to study the governing documents on an age-appropriate level. And that's one of my goals is to work with organizations and give them another tool in their toolkit. We can, and it occurred to me when I hear this, that's exactly what we should be doing at every level is bringing it up at some point or another when it's grave level. And if we could figure out how to way to word that, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the plank obviously is pointed towards high school, but if we can get people to work on legislation, if it's one of our top 10, we could encourage them to adopt the language that was a little broader, I think. Okay, so that's another one where I think we can't really quantify what the benefit is, but we just have a sense that it would be a good thing, it seems. Okay. Next is 137, medical freedom. Let me get down to that. 137, okay. I'm not reading, I'm going to read the intro to this, but then I'm not going to read A through K.
We skip government. We skip government pensions. Did you want to?
Hold on, did I skip government pensions? We did, I don't have it in my list, though.
Everybody else has it.
I don't know what the heck, what number?
78.
We don't have to cover it. It's okay.
It's mine, I want to cover it.
He submitted.
How the heck did I leave that off the list?
Sorry, Becky.
Thank you, Becky.
It's number 78, by the way.
I'm working on it. Because I was sitting here thinking a minute ago, I'm like, I don't really have the numbers for mine, but I need to figure out how to define it.
It's fixing to qualify for one, so I don't know.
Okay. All right, 78 is government pensions. The Texas legislature shall enact new rules to begin to transition government pensions for public sector employees from a defined benefit pension to a defined contribution retirement plan similar to a 403B. So the 403B is the government pension, like the non-taxable government pension is what it kind of is. It's kind of like a 401k, but for public sector employees is what it is. Okay. I'll speak on this. There's a bunch of reasons why I want to do this. Number one, public sector employees at this point, 40 years ago, they didn't get paid as well as private sector. That has changed really from basically when the economy flipped post-Reagan until now. I mean, we've been we used to be real tight on what we spent on government, but after the economy got better with Reagan, we started spending more on government on all levels, and that's just been growing ever since. And now government employees actually are compensated equal to, or in some cases more than, private sector employees. So they're plum jobs. We're sort of paying our overlords more than we make. They also have pensions that most people working in the private sector don't have. We phased out private pensions back in '74 for the most part. That's when we created at the federal level, the laws that allowed for 401ks. And so the big companies, Bethlehem Steel and the car companies and everybody else, IBM, they started transitioning over. And now almost nobody in the private sector has a pension, a true pension. They're exceedingly rare. And they're getting rarer as the old beneficiaries, pass away and the pension obligations become smaller and smaller. But in the public sector, government sector, we still have huge liabilities. And if you talk to anybody about government, the two biggest liabilities that are not controlled are pensions and medical. So I'm trying to address how we can get rid of that and cut the overhang that's going to continue to make our taxes go up, just like Social Security, for decades in the future, and how we can relieve the financial pressure on future generations. Our young voters, we have those teenagers, YRs. I don't know if you guys are in Partners in Coalition this morning, very articulate young man from the teenage Republicans. It's his future that I'm worried about, and it's his future is the reason that I want to make this change. The other thing is it'll actually force a reckoning. If we have a fixed amount of tax revenue that comes in, whether it's at the state level or a county level or a city level, If we have to actually, if we end up converting these, then they're going to have some kind of a payout, and there's going to end up being a choice that they have to make between, do I pay pensions or do I raise taxes? And that puts the Democrats on the horns of a dilemma, because they'll have to actually confront the overpromising that they have done in front of the taxpayers. I think it's a political winner for us as Republicans to force this issue out into the open and force your city council and your county commissioners court to have to deal with it. I think that will help us politically to bring more people to our side, to the Republican Party. And the last thing is, I was actually reading an article this morning about the death of Kissinger, and Kissinger recognized in a conversation, I don't know how much you guys know about this, little economic history, Kissinger recognized that Chile, when they moved away from the Bismarck model, which is, Bismarck is the one who, in Germany, that created the Social Security system that we've adopted in the U.S., and that is the same thing as pensions in a way. Chile went away from that and created a private investment model like 401ks back in the 80s when Pinochet was there. And that's what's created the big pool of money that they used to invest, and it's absolutely swelled the middle class in Chile. And that's been recognized for years and years. I actually studied it in school. So I want to move people away from where the government has your money and trickles it out to you are in control of your own money. This gives the individuals more power over their own retirement as opposed to being reliant upon the government. So it's a freedom-based thing that we need to do, and it will empower individuals to control their own retirement instead of dependency on government. And they're having control of their own money will actually help the economy grow, because having the government control your pensions is like a regulator, a suppressor on economic growth. So this is a good thing all the way around. I don't have the numbers to back it up, but to me, there's so many different facets to this and so many good reasons to do it. That's why I put it in here. I think it's exactly the sort of thing that we as Republicans ought to be doing that helps the long-term health of our economy, our citizens, and our party. Adolfo.
Thank you. I understand the difference between defined contribution and defined benefit plans. I did audit work for years, so I understand this very, very well, the difference between defined benefit and defined contribution plans. Defined benefit plans are the most expensive plan that you can have, and the only organizations, there are a few minor exceptions, but the organizations that use this are governmental and governmental entities, because they don't have what it takes to take it away from their employees. But it is, if you also look at financial statements for governmental entities, the largest unfunded liability are these benefit plans. And periodically, governmental entities will sell bonds to fund this. And then as inflation goes up, which should not have been done because it should have been funded as it goes along. And then as costs go up, they get unfunded again. My concern with this, and I support it, but my concern, this is a political hot potato. And the question is, can we, the Republicans, control the media and what they say as it relates to this? Because the Democrats are going to say, look, they're trying to take money away from your retirement. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to save money by reducing taxes. I agree with this whole proposition. I'm concerned about the rhetoric and whether we can control the rhetoric as it relates to this.
And let me answer that. I thank you for the support. I know that you understand it because you've got a financial background as I have. And for those of you who haven't thought about it, what happens with these type of benefits plans is governments at all levels are basically using the people's earnings and assets to guarantee that the stock market will go up year after year to benefit public sector employees. That's what they're doing. They're betting your livelihood and your work to benefit them. So it's a subjugation issue for me. On rhetoric, it's definitely something that's going to be a huge fight. They're going to complain, but it's like everything else. They're going to complain about anything that we want to do. We have to be able to get out there and make the argument. And I think if we start the conversation up, then we drive up awareness of the issue, and that's the only way we're going to win. I mean, to me, it's a lot like the abortion issue. I mean, there was a Roe v. Wade ruling, law of the land. You know, we were just getting crushed in the 70s and in the early 80s for our stance on life. But as we continued the fight and kept getting the facts out there, and medical advances came our way to prove up our fight, or prove up our arguments, opinions swung our way. And we need to get back to that in the current environment now that Roe v. Wade's gone away and it's back to the individuals. But and there's another argument to make there. But I think we have to take it on. And I'm in favor in this one of taking it on head on. Because if you look at the way the parties are flipping around for the constituencies of the parties a lot and who the voter bases are, I think there's so many people that don't have a pension at all. It's a huge number, because we talk about, well, we're going to make this like a 401k. The percentage of people in the working population, the private sector, that have a 401k is only like 45%. Most people don't even have a 401k because it's big companies are the ones that offer it. Small companies don't. And my numbers may even be high because they're old. So it's going to be hard for them to defend to the general population that, hey, people that are our servants, because they're public servants, have got these golden parachute sort of pension plans that we constantly criticize big companies for giving to their executives. So that's, I think, going to be our argument. So anybody else? Ken? You okay? Dale, you walked in. Do you want to?
Yeah, I feel like I should apologize. My dad's had an emergency open heart surgery in Houston.
No, you don't need to apologize for that.
Just walked in a few moments ago.
Yep.
The city of Houston has been in dispute with the fire department for how many years? I mean, they're like a poster child of why we need to get rid of it.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. The police and fire pension in Dallas failed, and we injected in Dallas $4 billion into it like 6 years ago. Guess what's back in the news? They need more money. And the reason they do is because as we've shrunk police departments with the defund police movement, and they're doing it in Dallas, even though they're claiming they're not, we're down 900 officers because of the way they're doing the counting. It's an accounting gimmick. They have less people to put in, and so they're falling behind at a faster rate. And because they can't cover the pension, it's affecting recruitment for police and fire. It's the unvirtuous circle of these type of plans. That's what's happening. So, Dale?
I think also, my grandfather, years ago, a lot of our parents and grandparents maybe were in that. It used to be when the private sector was paying $50,000 and the government employee was getting $30,000, that inducement for retirement was there. Now it's private practice getting $50,000, the government's getting $70,000, and they still have this huge fat. So I think it's been an inversion of the original principle. So the original principle, I say, was good back to the issue of rhetoric. 50 years ago, we gave retirement because they wouldn't get any money for 20, 30 years.
Yep.
That's not the case anymore.
I mentioned that when I first introduced. Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Okay.
I just want to clarify.
Yep.
What you want is a defined contribution?
Yeah. So in other words, we'll have offer like 401ks for city employees or county employees or state employees.
Goes around your ERISA.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, what I tell people is, and I wouldn't apply this to teachers personally, and maybe not even fire and pension, but if you look at the other people that work for the government, they're sitting in an office pushing paper around just like somebody at the Exxon headquarters or, any other regular business, and even if they're doing something like working for the state parks department, that's no different than people who work outside for the electric company. So there's the people who are doing the similar kind of jobs, they ought to get similar kind of benefits. Dale, I'm gonna go on to the next one if that's okay, because we got a bunch we got to go to. All right, so back to 137, which was medical freedom. And I'll read the first introduction. We call for an addition to the Texas Bill of Rights that explicitly states that Texans have the natural, inalienable right to refuse vaccinations or other medical treatment. Therefore, the following are expressly forbidden, even in an emergency or in a pandemic. And then there's a list about 12 things. So if Becky, if you want to talk about those, or just if we want to work on all of these things, or if there's a couple of them that are more important than others, just let me know.
Okay, so this is my area of expertise. It's my baby. I'm absolutely passionate about this for a couple of reasons. This is tyranny in its worst form. What we do or do not do in all areas of our health, and I'm not talking about abortion because abortion is not health care, but just to clarify that line. But when tyranny strikes, what do they go after? They go after your guns, they go after your health care, they control your health care. Those are two of the most, and they control food supply, because if they can control that, they can control you. And so all areas of medical freedom are absolutely essential. Now, we did pass the COVID-19 Act in special session, and now private employers cannot force you to get a COVID vaccine. Thank you, Jesus, right? But we only could get COVID-19, and we tried all vaccines.
Didn't we get COVID-19 for public employees in the regular?
We got public employees in regular session.
COVID's coming.
Right. The governor claimed victory. We said no, because then his special order went away, and emergency order, whatever you call it. And now all the private sector employees, like my husband, are now not covered. And so they came back and said, you know what, I think Baylor Scott White came out with a mandate that its employees started mandating the COVID vaccine again. And but just recently, and I think that's what made the governor add it to the special session. That and Representative Brian Harrison, who's been an absolute champion on this issue. And he just kept hammering on that until, he lost a lot of friends over the fact that he would not let this whole medical freedom thing go, particularly the COVID vaccines. We've got a lot more to do. We've got the COVID stuff in place. We think we've covered students. There are those of us who would like to see students specifically covered in additional law, and Brian Harrison's trying to get the governor to add that in. However, a lot of the Mays Middleton and a lot of the legislators that got this passed in special session say, we've got students covered. It was the Briscoe-Cain amendment, where it's a contractor is anyone that receives a benefit from the employer. And that's who the employer cannot mandate on, and that would cover students. So anyway, long story short, there's a lot to do here in terms of medical freedom. So I'm open to doing what we can. We just keep taking bites of the apple until we get the whole thing eaten, right? And we're making progress, but I just think this issue covers all Texans from birth to death. We're talking things like death panels, folks. My husband has buried 2 grandfathers, one of them in the past 6 weeks. My husband's in his 60s. His grandfather just died. The man was 99 years old. A few years ago, he buried his other grandfather, also at age 99. These people were valuable, functioning members of society up until death. But if we allow them to have control of our medical care, they will determine who can have surgeries, who can receive treatment, what will get paid for. They're doing it already. It will get worse. And you'll just be, everybody will be put in hospice by the time they're 80 and they won't let you do anything. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but
Canada and Seattle
yeah,
and Washington.
yeah, the Prime Minister of Canada comes to America for health care.
Well, and they have basically euthanasia laws in both those where,
Yeah.
where they can determine that they can put you to death,
Right.
actually, and withdraw medical care for you,
Right,
kind of when they choose.
yeah.
So,
And we've got parents with a child who has some sort of an illness, and the hospital is determining when they're going to pull the plug, and the family has no say. No say. And it's not just children, but that's the most common example that you hear of. And they're really doing it in a more ramped up way in Europe and some other countries. In Great Britain, they're doing it big time. So I don't see how we cannot put this on our top 10 list. Whether we want to par it down, I think we can have that discussion. There's a lot on that
are
list.
there any of these that you think are particularly important?
Well, I think we need to, because we're kind of on a roll with it, I think we need to go for informed consent for all vaccines. All vaccines. And the reason we're going for informed consent, and this was Brian Harrison's brainchild, is because this is an opt-in. It's an opt-in. You go, they tell you what they know about it. You say, yes, I accept these benefits and risks, or no, I do not. And that is your right, and I hesitate to use the term right because all my lawyer friends tell me that but that is a God-given right that you should have if you don't. And you opt in to it, or you opt in, and there's nothing that can be done to you if you have an informed consent law. You say, you know what? Nope, don't think so. Don't want to have that shingles vaccine or whatever it is. And you say no, and they can't touch you at that point. So I think that's probably my number one, but it's hard for me to choose because I'm pretty passionate about all this stuff. So, but I think we need to go for all vaccines now. I feel like, Melinda, I don't know as a doctor, how you feel about this, but I feel like we're developing momentum here with this whole vaccine issue. So I think we need to keep rolling with it.
I mean, they passed that act. When was that? Like back in 1984 or something, that made the government completely free of any liability of vaccines. And once that legislation was passed, the number of vaccines that were required now has skyrocketed. I mean, the number of vaccines that my grandchildren are required to take versus my kids is amazing. And there are pediatricians that are refusing to care for children if the mother refuses the vaccines. So that's a whole nother issue that has to be addressed, is these doctors can refuse to take care of your kids if you don't agree to the list of 50 vaccines. I support all the issues on this medical freedom except for J. And I don't know how that got snuck in. I'm sure it was the nurses.
Can you read it, Matt?
But, because it's,
Let me read it. Jay says, any requirement that a nurse practitioner can only provide health care to Texans under a delegation agreement with a physician in the state of Texas.
yeah, and I'm sure that was the nurses lobby group that did that because they want nurse practitioners to be independent practitioners and not have to answer to physicians. So this got snuck in and it shouldn't have. So I would accept everything except J needs to be deleted from this plank.
Medical freedom plank.
No, and that got snuck in.
Okay.
So-
I really had questions about that. I remember reading it, and I thought, why is that here?
Yeah.
That should be more, that belongs under a different plank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And nurse practitioners do not, I don't care how much alphabet soup they put after their name, including PhDs, so they can be called doctors. They're not doctors. They do not get the same medical training at all. They don't understand the physiology. There's a lot they don't understand. But they want to be seen as independent practitioners now, and that's a mistake. So, and I know the lobby group continues to, and they snuck it in, but let's be smart and eliminate that. But I support everything else.
Okay.
We and seniors have to be careful because Medicare, all these advantage programs are requiring, it's just like the vaccines for kids. They're going to go through this checklist, and if a senior doesn't want to have something done, they're going to be labeled non-compliant, and Medicare will refuse to pay for their care. So your medical choices are being taken away with Medicare, whether you realize that or not.
Yeah, yeah, insurance companies are really complicit in this, and they're a critical component. So,
Okay, moving on. 142 is right to try.
that's mine.
So this says, were we not just doing 138? Oh, you're right, we should do 138. Texas Medical Practice Act. To protect the rights of both patients and physicians, the Texas Medical Board should adopt the following provisions in the Texas Medical Practice Act, A through H. Okay. Back to you, Becky. I feel like I'm running a game show.
Right? I'll take vaccine freedom for 12, Matt. No, that didn't even make my top 10. I would make you asked me for 3 choices under Health and Human Services, which is my category. I would have made all 3 of mine medical practice or medical freedom, not these other 2, but I feel like these are related. And the reason that I chose this, and maybe that nurse practitioner thing belongs more under one of these other categories than it does under medical freedom. The reason I chose this is because as a practicing pharmacist, and I'm mostly retired now, but I could see more and more and more where I did not have the freedom to practice my profession as I saw fit. For instance, if I did not want to dispense abortion pills, have people lining up and dispensing abortion pills at my pharmacy, then I had the right to say, you know what, I don't fill those, but you're welcome to go to another colleague over here that will fill that for you. And that was my prerogative. If a doctor who does not want to perform an abortion works for a hospital and they want them to perform abortions, that doctor should have the right to say, no, I don't want to do that. Right, it's a right of conscience. And so that, and that's probably a moot point in Texas now, but that's the example that I'm using in terms of that plank. Now this is the Medical Practice Act, right?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So that's really why I chose that, is I do think that medical practitioners should have the right of conscience to determine, whatever. If there are things that they find morally objectionable or religiously objectionable or whatever, they should, as long as they're not violating other people's rights, they should be able to say, no, I'm not, doing this. And I think we have to be careful about how we do it. That's why I chose it. It did not make my top 10. I feel like the medical freedom is the biggie. And also, while I have the mic, the right to try, to me, that really is sort of a medical freedom issue. But that's where if you have the right to try an alternative treatment if you and your physician so choose to do that. And
Can I ask you a question about that?
yeah, I don't know if I'll know the answer, but
Well, it's okay. We can both figure it out. When you say right to try, are we talking about like an experimental drug?
all of the above is how I see it. If you want to try, if you want to go take a bath in essential oils and see if that cures your cancer, and that's what you and your doctor decide you want to do, then you as a human being, an American, should have the right to do that.
Okay.
I'm not.
Bloodletting? I'm just, because
It could get,
crazy.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they do some weird stuff.
Right.
And if you get any quack out there
Right.
who wants to do something, are we covering for them? Is that?
Well, I think we have to ask that, and I think we have to be careful with it.
Yeah,
Do-
that's what I'm asking. Is it-
I think everybody in this room may be old enough to remember Laetrile. Do you remember
If it's a
Laetrile?
doctor, if it's a medical doctor that's prescribing the treatment, as opposed to just, your.
Some sort of a,
Your Louisiana
yeah,
voodoo practitioner
Yeah.
next door that you're listening to, would that be covered by this? Or
yeah.
is it only?
I think we got to put a line, draw a line
Yeah, that's
somewhere.
what I'm
Yeah,
asking.
we got to draw a line somewhere. I mean, you shouldn't be able to set up shop and hang out a shingle and claim to cure everything. I'm not going for that. But if my doctor decides that, you know what, I've been reading some research and this is traditional treatment's not working for you, or maybe the side effects are just too much for you, or we're not getting the desired results, maybe we need to try some kind of alternative more. And I don't think the government should be able to tell you, no, you can't do that. You can't have access to that within reason.
And a lot of drugs are used off-label very successfully.
Yes.
And those are decisions, those off-label uses, that's a decision made between the physician and the patient.
About 40%, I think, is the current number of drugs that are used.
Yeah, in obstetrics, we use quite a few drugs because nothing's cleared for pregnancy. But obstetricians do the research and know that that's going to be beneficial. And didn't President Trump pass legislation to allow for right to try?
I think that President Trump did. And I don't know how extensive it was, and I didn't take time to look into it. But like I said, these 2 points do not make my top 10 list, but I do feel like they're related to the whole medical freedom issue.
Question, should those planks be combined? They clearly need to be modified, given what I just heard.
I don't know that they need to be combined.
Yeah, right to try is a separate category.
Yeah, I think they're different enough, but I think they're cousins, not siblings. Does that make sense?
They're what? Cousins,
I
not
think
siblings?
they're cousins, not siblings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spoken like a nurse. Yeah, Ken? Oh. Or a pharmacist.
Not a pharmacist, retired machinist. But anyway, two things that come to my mind. One is you have patients who are basically, they're in a hopeless situation, and there's a research treatment that seems to have some promise, but you've got these ethical laws which stand in the way of them receiving it. And the second thing that comes to my mind is ivermectin, horseworm medicine, which, by the way, was very effective against COVID. But a lot of doctors were told, oh, no, you can't use that. We'll take your license away. We'll prosecute you if you try to do that.
I think that's why this had so much popularity last convention, is exactly because of the ivermectin issue. And yeah, my concern, and I'm not well versed in this at all, but my concern is just like kind of like we talked about, there needs to be some kind of a definition of who you're working with, and maybe it has to be a doctor, because you look at, there's a lot of things that are done overseas, and I could probably order in some kind of prescription medicine that's not approved in the U.S. or some treatment that's not approved by the U.S., but there's laws against importation. So there's a lot of different sort of corners to it, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So next one on my list, unless I messed the list up, is 134, which is Texas Health Savings Accounts.